You are listening to the What a Word podcast, an interview-style podcast where guests bring their unique experiences and insight on culture, life's challenges, and faith. Each episode is seasoned with words which will inspire and encourage. Now here is your host, Ryan Sharp.
Good morning and welcome to another episode of the What a Word podcast. It's been a while, and this is something I say every few months because life gets in the way. I stop recording and then something tugs at me that I gotta get back in this space to share conversations on life, culture, life's challenges, and faith. And I bring on guests who come from a variety of walks of life. But I feel that every time I have a conversation, there is a nugget from the guest that I believe speaks to the experience of my audience. So today it's no different. I'm honored to have a guest of mine who is a friend of mine, and her name is Dorcely. She is currently the president of the NAACP's Middletown Branch. She is a legal services professional. She's a mother and a wife, and she's also someone who is impactful in the social justice space. So I'm honored to have her here. What I've given you is just a summary of who she is. She's also born in Jamaica, and we will talk about our life's journey. And I'm hoping, and I know you'll be inspired by this conversation. I'm happy to have her here with me. Please join me in welcoming my guest, Dorcely, to the What a Word podcast. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you.
Oh man, it's I shared with you offline that I have not really done a lot of recording. Life got busy, and I think a part of me was just in mourning in light of all that's happened and is happening in our world. And I shared with Cindy that our sisters have the ability to center Black men. I think it's understated how even being married, and Cindy and I will talk about it. There are so many days when I come home and I share with my wife about what our respective days, the experiences of our respective days. And we have a way of just centering in each other through conversation. And I don't take it for granted. I know you and your husband have a tremendous relationship, and no doubt that may be your experience as well. So I'm honored, so honored to have you. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the What a Word podcast.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here, humbled.
And we were just sharing, man, about marriage and parenting, etc. Talk to us about your family.
Okay. I am the proud wife to a husband, Pierre Dorcely. He is a Haitian immigrant in this country. And we have one child, my baby, forever my baby. He's almost 20, but he's forever my baby. He's in his second year of college. And, we're just navigating life in America.
Yeah.
Immigrants, but I love our family unit. We're a strong unit. We believe in faith and just being there for one another. We believe in transparency. Even with our son, like we'll tell him, listen, just tell us everything. We may be disappointed. We may disagree, but we can't tackle it. We can't help you if we don't know what's going on. So we just like that open and honest communication, between the three of us, so that we can be stronger and navigate this world together. Like we need one another desperately. So just like you were saying with your wife, that's important, that relationship at the end of the day, because especially our Black men, oftentimes what they carry, they don't necessarily share. We as Black women are very burdened, and but I believe that you guys carry this burden that often is overlooked because you're not as open with sharing it as we are. And so it's important for us as wives to recognize that and kind of be that safe place and that safe space when you come home, so that you can unload, because where else
Yeah.
are you going to do?
Powerful, man. That's powerful. And thank you so much for sharing and your transparency. I've thought a lot about, and I mentioned it earlier, just what Black women contribute to our larger society. And, I was speaking about recent events, and the numbers showed and confirmed that Black women, for the most part, in terms of our democracy, do enough to save us from ourselves, just in terms of what voting numbers show. How was it for you, your experience post? I mean, Kamala describes it in her book, The 107 Days, but how were those moments when the results came out? How were those moments for you as a Black woman?
This last election. um it was interesting. It was disappointing. However, it wasn't shocking, you know. But it was certainly disappointing. And again, when we look at the numbers, the voting records, like, there are just so many people that still feel, and this is a conversation I have with my husband all the time, because he'll say this. He's like, "Oh, your vote doesn't count." And the more people that believe that, um, it adds up. We've gone to the local college, getting people to sign up for voter registration. And I've had so many people say that to me. Well, my vote doesn't count. But imagine if a million of you say that, right? It compounds and it does count, and we can see it. We can see what happened. And so it's just difficult. And especially, like, the fact that I believe many people didn't necessarily vote for Trump because they believed in his ability to lead this country confidently. And um they voted for him because they didn't want to vote for this Black woman. So it's just, it's really hard. It's um I don't know. And it doesn't even matter how educated we are or how much experience we have. Um and the opposition clearly didn't, it was just it was no competition, really. However, that's just America, right? America has truly shown us who it is. It's shown us its racism, it's sexism, xenophobia. Like, all of it is just wrapped up in how America votes.
Mm,
And so it was just truly disappointing. And again, I have never been diehard for any one candidate for presidency. Like, we're not going to agree on every single thing, but however, I do believe she was clearly the better candidate. And unfortunately, her race and her sex didn't qualify her enough in this country.
yeah, powerful. I was reading, well, the audiobook, rather, listening to the audiobook Becoming, Michelle Obama's journey in the White House. And she spoke about dignity. And I had to sit with that for a little bit because, both you and I are church kids, members of the same faith community. And there's a reference in Proverbs about the principle is internal discipline and what that means for leaders. And I think the reference is if you can control yourself, you're better than the person who rules a city, because ultimately the person who has no self-control is going to meet destruction. And we saw examples of that. I'm sure you did as well growing up, where leaders manifested a level of dignity. You never really saw people, give people a piece of their mind or curse publicly, even when challenged. And I saw that even in my own parents and my aunts and uncles, a high level of dignity, even when challenged. You never really saw people lose it. It was rare and far and few in between. And so Michelle says, And I want to bring up the quote that when she campaigned, she was making an appeal for the idea of dignity. She said, dignity had always gotten us through. It is a choice, not always the easy one, but the people I respected most in life made it again and again. What are your thoughts as a woman of color, an entrepreneur, and the president of the Middletown branch of the NAACP? What has dignity meant for you serving in these capacities and in these times?
So for me, dignity, it shows up the same way across all these different spaces that I occupy. So whether it's, in real estate, in leadership, entrepreneurship, it's I believe that there's no professionalism or no leadership without dignity and integrity, and I believe they go hand in hand. So, like Mrs. Obama, the people that I admire most are those that, in the face of adversity, still showed poise and self respect and grace. They did not mirror the disrespect that was showed to them. They remained grounded in who they are and what they represented. We don't see that much today. We don't see that much today, but that doesn't mean, though, that we need to be passive, because there is a time when in leadership it requires us to be firm, it requires us to be plain and direct, but being direct does not mean, or dignity doesn't mean being cruel. And being direct doesn't mean cruel, and it doesn't mean to demean people. There's a difference, and we're seeing right now in our administration that they can't make they don't see that difference. They're just, or person in office, I won't even say the name, um behaves like a child throwing a tantrum when they don't get their way. And that is not how the leader of a country should behave. So, in these roles and in these times, dignity has meant, for me, professionalism over provocation. It has meant integrity over impulse. And I have to do that in order to protect my character, and then also to protect the credibility of the work that I do.
Wow. You've given me a teachable moment here because I remember the moment, um, January 6th. We were home and our kids, we had the TV on CNN for some reason, and we saw men and women attack the Capitol. I believe the moment was the certification of the election results. And my children were traumatized. We didn't know what was going to happen, but we saw it unfold in real time. If you could, for me, and that was a teachable moment for us, what could you say to our young ones who are observing all of this season we're in, where, like you described, people say any and anything, they'll curse publicly, they'll berate people who ask the tough questions. What can you say to children who are in this season, who see this, who may believe that this is a form of strength?
Um, I think, what I can say is, because what we see is that this particular administration has made it okay to behave this way. It's empowered people to to be very blatant and overt with their disrespect and their racism, and just, to do whatever they want with no consequence. And so, for me as a Christian, for anyone looking on, especially since they claim Christianity while they do this, to us as a Christian, what I would say to children is to look to Christ, right? What was his example? Because we can't follow this example of this man, because he's clearly not modeling what Christ has shown us. He has shown us that we need to be just like he did, with people screaming and yelling at him. He still showed dignity and love, and he was forgiven, and he showed respect. And we also saw that when he needed to be firm, he was firm, right? When he needed to throw over tables, he did. However, that's who we turn to when we're looking for how to carry ourselves in this world. And, it can be discouraging sometimes when you don't necessarily see that the people that are carrying themselves with the utmost respect and character, you don't see them making any headway. So very often people are like, well, let me just do what the others are doing. Let
Nice
me
guys finish last.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So like, they're not with this turn the other cheek thing. But I just want to let them know that, I don't know, my hope is in Christ. It's still very discouraging, but I'm just reminding them of the model that we need to follow. Like, who do you want to be like? What do you want people to say about you? What do you want your legacy to be? Because me looking at that's not the person that I want to be. I can't be comfortable in that. So character is all that we have. That's something
Okay.
cannot take away from us. We cannot control how other people behave, but we can control how we behave. And we do want to treat people. This goes back to fundamentals. And this is what, teachers taught us and our parents taught us. We want to treat people the way we would want to be treated.
Yeah.
And so that is paramount.
And I want to also follow up with what Cindy Lee said. Powerful, by the way, and very insightful. We want to thank those of you who laid out examples for us of true dignity and firmness in the face of opposition. Our leaders, civil rights leaders, our teachers, our pastors, people in public spaces who are currently showing us that you can be firm, you can resist, and you can still manifest dignity in those positions. We give kudos to you, and we thank you for your example, because what we're now seeing and what we're now experiencing is not strength. And our children need to know that, I mentioned there's a saying that nice guys finish last, but truly there's strength in maintaining dignity and firmness and character. It takes you
Mhm.
a very long way. And it may not seem that way with what we're seeing now,
Right.
but there is a principle, and this principle is timeless, that character and dignity really takes you a long way. And thank you so much for that, Cindy Lee. It's really a
When
significant point and a teachable moment. Say
yes.
that again?
I said when they go low, we go high, right?
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Um, I want to talk to you about your journey. I shared offline, and we've spoken about this in times past, that my mom brought me to this country because she sincerely believed there were more opportunities here. Both of you and I are immigrants, and you also share the immigrant story. Share what role opportunity played in your decision to come to this country and ultimately become a U.S. citizen.
So I mean, wasn't my choice, right? At 9. However, like many immigrant families, my father came here first, worked, brought my mom. She did the same, and then eventually my sisters and I came, and it was for them also the same. It was rooted in opportunity. They were seeking better economic possibilities, greater opportunity for their children's future, or what they thought. They probably thought greater access to education, stability for us. But and yeah, that's why, and that's most people's story. That's the immigrant story. They're coming here because they're seeking something better. My As far as becoming a citizen, I have always been it was important to me because I have always been interested in from a young age in civil rights, in human rights. I was in student government. I was in Amnesty International, like all the things that are surrounded with the process of making the rules and the regulations that shape us. So I wanted to vote. That was something that I could not wait to be able to do. I wanted to vote. I wanted to participate in civic life. We were here. We were living here. We were working here. We were paying taxes here. We were going to school here. And so to me, I wanted my voice to be involved in the laws and the policies that govern how we were living, and that was going to shape our lives and our future children's lives as well. So that was important to me, being able to vote. So citizenship represented not just belonging, but it represented responsibility for me. It meant not only benefiting from the opportunity, but contributing to the system itself, broken as it is. Even that, with the defects in it, being able to contribute in what I wanted to see, right? Being the change that you wish to see. So that's why being able to participate in the process was important to me.
How have you dealt with the current tone and theme of where immigration has gone in terms of our national discourse with, ICE being the response now to the political rhetoric? You've described in a very comprehensive way the story or the journey of most of us. But it does seem now like, based on the national rhetoric, immigrants are really the problem, or we become the concern in terms of safety, in terms of our national discourse. How does that make you feel now as an immigrant in terms of where you started? Parents decided opportunities were available here, and now we are moving targets. How does that? How have you reconciled those competing narratives?
So it's really difficult to see, right? Especially when we know that this country was built on the backs of immigrants, right? Like, who is not an immigrant in this country unless you're a Native American, right? And it is just, we know that it's only to cause fear. So we have to pick a group, and this is historic. This is what they did in Nazi Germany and whatever. So we have to pick a group that we demonize, a group that we make the responsible for every problem that we face. So I haven't been able to get a job, the immigrant took it. I can't have affordable health care, that's because we're paying for the immigrants to have health care. Like all these different things. And even the narrative that they're just picking up criminals, and that's not the case, because we're seeing actual citizens that are being deported, people that went through the whole legal process and did it correctly. We're seeing them pull people off lines that they've gone through the entire legal process of becoming a citizen, and now they're supposed to be sworn in, and you tell them no. So it was never about doing it correctly. It was only about controlling specific people, types of people that are Black and brown that are in this country. When you look at that list that they have banned, the different countries that they have banned, I mean, who are the people that are in those countries? The majority, they look like us. So this is about white America's fear again to of becoming a minority. And so they are going to point to all of the immigrants that look like us. We are the problem. And so even some Black Americans have bought into this particular ideology and this narrative that we are the problem and we are taking, their jobs and all this stuff. So it's very like, we knew that the opportunity that we sought, or the promise of America was never truly fulfilled, but we bought into what it was, what we thought it was becoming. Right? We wanted to be a part of, after the civil rights movement and everything, okay, we're moving in the right direction. And so we bought into the promise of what would be. And now we're seeing all of that kind of dialed back. And it's scary. It really is. It really is.
I love what you pointed to, when you said we bought into the idea of what it was becoming. Because what it also points to is the ability of generations before us to pivot when things went south.
Mm-hmm.
And, we spoke earlier about dignity, but pivoting is also another strength. And I want to take this opportunity to embrace and applaud those of us who have the ability, in spite of what's going on around us, to regroup, to take a breath, to rest, to pivot, to do things that are remarkable in the face of adversity, chaos, and cruelty. I want to, we could touch back on this, but I want to shift gears a bit.
Mm-hmm.
You're Caribbean and you're the president I mentioned in my introduction. You're the president of an historical Black civil rights organization. It has been said, and there is a notion, and you can let me know if you agree, that many times Caribbean folk don't engage civically or politically or otherwise because the whole notion of coming here for an opportunity means we don't get involved with all that other stuff. How did your awakening begin? And where did your journey, how did this journey end up with you now being the president of the Middletown branch of the NAACP?
Well, let's talk about that notion for Caribbeans, right? So I definitely think that historically that perception that Caribbean Americans are detached from the civil rights movement and from institutions like the NAACP. We're definitely in there, but not as much, because I think a lot of Caribbeans have this idea that the Black American experience is not their experience. And I would beg to differ, because when we step out into society, they're not thinking, oh, that person is Jamaican and that person's Haitian and that's Trinidadian. We are Black. And so the racism, the experience of Black America becomes our experience. The racism that we encounter, that our children encounter, the barriers that we face, it's the same. We have to navigate those same systems. They affect us in the same way. And so, Dr. King, and we just came off of his birthday and everything, he had said that we may have all, let me not botch this, we may have all come on different ships, but we're in the same boat now. And so I remember this used to tell people when I was younger, I didn't come on a boat, I came on a plane, right? But whichever vehicle you came, whether it was the boat, the plane, whether you were dragged here, whether you came here voluntarily, we are all in the same boat. And so the opportunities that we as Caribbean immigrants benefit from today exists because of the sacrifices and the victories of Black Americans through the civil rights movement. And so we can't discount that. We are beneficiaries of their struggle, whether we recognize it or not. And so engagement is important because separation weakens us. And we have a habit as Black people as separating ourselves by nationality and, shade. Oh, you're light skinned and I'm dark, all the nonsense. I speak a different language. And that's what they want from us, because there is strength in unity. And so the strength is what creates the change. And so they don't want us to unite. And we play into that hand all the time. How I became the president, well, that was not intended at all. So this branch was reactivated almost 3 years ago. And I did help to get people signed up to get the branch reactivated when someone approached me in the mall and said what they were looking to do. So then I became a part of that. and in putting in the first leaders of the group. But I was like, I just want to be a member, you know. So I did the nominating committee. They had the first leaders. Then again, I was on the nominating committee again, and we could not find enough people to have the positions. Now I became first vice president just with the idea, because you can have first, second, third, however many, just with the idea that, listen, I don't have time. I want to help and participate, but I cannot be, as active as I would like to be. And the role of the first vice president was just to really, it wasn't real a really defined role. It was just to cover for the president if they can't chair a meeting, and also to step up to the presidential role if they step down. However, I was told that that was not going to happen, Cindy. It's not going to happen. Lo and behold, a little less than 2 months of the new president, the second year in her role, she stepped down. So I was just like, Lord, what is this? So I really actually had to pray about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you can imagine, because this was after the election.
Sure.
This was towards the end of February 2025 or in March of 2025. And we had already seen what was happening. And being an immigrant, even though legally, and being, Black, a mom, a wife, it's a scary thing for me. Just being so, because as the president, you are the face of the organization. I'm the one that has to speak up and do, the press releases and the interviews and all the things. And people are crazy out here in the States. And one, the way that I got in the role was a little weird. I think there was some drama involved there that I didn't know what was happening. So I truly had to pray about it, because I don't like that. And that kind of caused me to observe for a little bit, because I just don't like confrontation and drama, especially when we're all supposed to be on the same page with, towards a goal that's important. So I got in this role and I really just had to pray about it. And one of the times that I was praying, Ryan, the Lord reminded me that my original goal was to be a civil rights attorney. And I didn't go to law school. I became a paralegal after school, well, while I was in school, doing my political science degree, pre-law, African American studies minor. I did my paralegal certification while I was there, and I've been a paralegal for like 25 years, right? And it's like the Lord reminded me, well, you wanted to be a civil rights attorney, because I was telling the Lord, I didn't ask for this. And oftentimes we want something and we pray for something, but the way that we envision it happening is completely different. So I thought I was going to be fighting for civil rights in this particular role. However, the Lord placed me in this position. And so I was just like, okay, all right. So I'm doing the same thing, just under a different title. And so I just said, listen, Lord, you just have to lead and you have to guide, because again, I'm doing this with a little bit of fear in this country, but I'm doing it because I feel it's necessary. And the Lord has called us as Christians to stand up. And one of my biggest issues that I have with our denomination is I don't see us standing up enough when it comes to things like this. Change doesn't happen within the four walls of the church. We have to step out of the walls. We have to be identifying with the struggles that the people are identifying with. And our churches are so separated as it is. Most of our congregations are all immigrants. And just because they weren't picking up, the Black ones, they were picking up the brown ones, we should be concerned. We should be. It's like, we have that whole thing where if it's not happening to us directly, it's just not our concern. And that's just not the case. That one of the things that I always go back to is, I think his name was Robert Muller, a German pastor, I believe. And I remember him saying, basically, it's, when they came for, the whomever, the workers, I didn't speak up, and then they came for the Jews and I didn't speak up. They came for this person, I didn't speak up, but then they came for me and there was no one left to speak up. And the point of that is, just because it's not happening to you now doesn't mean it's not going to show up at your front door in some way, shape, or form at some point. And because you haven't shown up for everybody else and now everybody else is gone, now you're going to be fighting alone. And so if that has to be your motivation to do what's right, then let it be your motivation to be what's right, knowing that it's coming to you at some point. But I think it should be enough to see that struggles are happening. Our neighbor, we should be caring for our neighbor. Our neighbor is struggling, and so we need to participate into alleviating that struggle. And so, yeah, that's I'm here.
Being a Black-owned business extends so much further than making great products. It's about representing the 8 out of 10 Black businesses that failed within the first 18 months of launch. It's about giving hope to the 4% of startups that are founded by Black women. It's about using our influence to affect change in the communities that look like us, and proving to the next generation that no matter the color of your skin, nothing is impossible.
You know, I want to sit with something you mentioned. And listen, what you said has so many levels. We could be here all afternoon talking about the points you raised. I want to sit with one, and I want to maybe touch on the others before we close.
Mm-hmm.
Praying about something and envisioning it working out a certain way, and then God working it out in a totally different way. There is someone who is listening to our conversation now who has prayed about something, a direction, a goal. It may be for them personally, or it may be for their family or their children. Say something to that person about that season of waiting when you've prayed, but things aren't mapping out exactly how you want it to. Say something to that person who may be in a space or a season of despair
Mm-hmm.
because they're not seeing the answer in the way they envisioned it.
So there are a couple things, right? One of the things that I've said before in another forum is that we always need to be prayerfully flexible. I think sometimes we are so focused on, Lord, I have made a list. I want this, and I need it to happen in this sequence, in this time frame. And so we get so frustrated when it's not happening. We're not allowing the Lord any room or any space to actually guide us in the way that he wants it to. And it's not that he's saying no. It could be that I need you to experience this first, because this experience is going to prepare you for this step that you're looking for. And so when I even think about my real estate journey, Ryan, I became a realtor for flexibility of time to go to law school. Here I am, almost 7 years later, a full-time real estate agent, still always like, dude, what happened to law school? Right? It just kind of um it kind of took over this path. However, the things that I have learned in the process, and just the rooms that the Lord has placed me in, the opportunities that He's opened up, sometimes I'm like, okay, He, I mean, we just have to let go. We have to allow Him to do what He needs to do. Because I was like, Lord, this was not supposed to be permanent. Why am I still here? I don't love the day to day of real estate. I love what I get to do in it. I love how I get to help people realize dreams that they didn't think were reachable. They didn't think were possible. That's my favorite part of the process. However, I was like, Lord, what's happening? But He's shown me so much in it. I've had so many moments, just like how when I came on here and I told you I felt unworthy to even be on here with you and having this conversation. However, He's put me in rooms that I'm sitting there like, do I deserve to be here? Have I hit those numbers? Like, these people are so much more successful. But He is placing me in rooms that I felt I wasn't qualified to be in. I literally one time had to have them show me the numbers because, again, this is what we do to ourselves. But we just need to kind of trust Him and trust the process and not be so strict with our time frame, not be so strict with how we think it's supposed to look like, because, God knows infinitely more than we do. He can see the future. He know what the end looks like. We don't. So we just literally have to trust Him. And that flexibility, you're praying, but we need to be flexible in that prayer, because again, if we're praying just for that specific thing and we don't see it, we're just going to be frustrated, and then we're going to be like, God, you're not even answering my prayers. What's the point? Right? So we have to ask for clarity and for wisdom and for discernment to be able to recognize when He's working, even though it doesn't look like what we thought it would look like.
Wow. And it sounds, to your point, like even if the journey takes a long time, it doesn't sound like the experiences along the way He wastes those. Like when you look back, you can see moments where even though you were frustrated or discouraged, that God doesn't even waste those disappointing seasons. There's
Mm.
something that you learned from it. And even now, just being able to share that with someone is another avenue He's opened up for you to even speak
Yeah.
encouragement into the lives of people.
And it makes me think again about the fact that, yes, my original intent was law school. And sometimes I think about it and I wonder, was it really because it's what I thought I was supposed to be and to do, and that's how I was supposed to help people? Or was it more of a status situation for me? And then I think about, well, if I was an attorney or if I was doctor this or doctor that, in my role of the NAACP, and these are thoughts that come into my head all the time, I feel like I'd be more credible. Like people would, accept, like, yes, she's a leader, she's an attorney, she's a doctor. However, look at God's disciples, look at Jesus's disciples, right? Did they have any of those distinctions? They were fishermen, they were all these things. And He is able to show His power and His strength and His, godliness more so if we don't look like we qualify, right? Like if we're not this big thing, and then it's more about Him and less about me. It's, oh, look what I did, I went to school and I became and by the way, that's honorable. However, it's oftentimes I wonder if it was really the position, the name, the status that was important. Because if I'm doing the same thing, I'm not doing it in the courts, but if I'm really doing the same thing, do I really need to be so hung up on the title? And so we just really have to let God do what He needs to do. And so, yes, I only have that bachelor's degree. However, the Lord is using me to do what He would have me do in our community, um, and kind of humbling me at the same time, and just reminding us that He can use anyone. I could be without a high school degree and he can use me. He can use a child. He can use the rock if he needs to. And I think that is what we need to focus on.
Wow. I also share your journey in terms of opportunities being presented. Some, in terms of my service on the town board
Mm,
in my town, it was not something I sought initially, but when the opportunity presented itself, I, like you, was apprehensive. I thought, this is not something I envisioned for my life. It wasn't on my bingo card or my to-do list or my vision board. But sometimes in stepping out on faith, even in the face of, it could not work out and someone else could get the opportunity, God gives us lessons with that. In our cases, you're now the president. I was successful in my own campaign. It worked out, and we're able to say to our children, give opportunity a try when it appears because you never know. I was
yeah.
prepared even for it not to work out and be able to use that as a life lesson for my children to say, sometimes we try and it doesn't work out and you can regroup and try again. But God in his wisdom said, saw fit to grant me success just based on stepping out on faith. So now my testimony is seasoned with victory just based on stepping out on opportunity, even when I didn't envision that role for myself. So someone listening should know that, man, opportunity is going to look different for all of us. Sometimes it's going to be somebody saying, listen, I think you're right for this. Sometimes it's going to be just you seeing a vacancy and stepping
Mm,
into that spot, and that could lead to something even more. So
yeah.
right now, if you are considering an opportunity, Cindy Lee shared, I've shared as well. Sometimes the timing is the timing, and you just have to step out on faith because you never know where that could lead. Yeah, you just never know.
Just
Uh,
do and figure it out later.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Say you miss 100% of the opportunities that you don't take, right? So it is important. And I do believe though that not everything that is offered to you is for you. So there needs to be discernment in that. So again, everything in prayer, but it is important because we are so down on ourselves. We don't feel worthy, we don't feel like we qualify. However, I always tell my son we got to put on godly confidence. If we don't have it for ourselves, we just take on him because we are made in his image. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. And so I just have to kind of cover myself with that, cloak myself with that. And then it's like when you are your superhero costume so that you're able to do incredible things that you didn't think you yourself could do, but all things through Christ, right?
Powerful. And I shared with you offline my own fascination with real estate. When I started in practice, I was doing representing buyers and sellers, and um, I was just fascinated with what purchasing of property meant, especially for Black and Brown people who
Mm-hmm.
have generational wealth. And when I met you, you were doing workshops for civic and religious organizations about the importance or the impact of what seems normal for most people, right? Oh, daddy passed down a house to me. And you were doing this for largely audiences of people of color, Black and Brown people. Could you explain to us why real estate you found that so compelling and why even now the workshops you do, uh, why you believe it's so important for us to give um, real estate or generational wealth serious consideration?
So at that time, Home to Harvest was the seminars that I was doing. And so it was all about using real estate as a vehicle towards generational wealth, but also that faith piece of it was, what do you do once you started to generate that wealth? How do you give back? How do you pour it back in your community? Because I believe that is our responsibility as people of faith, right? So the Bible says that a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. And so that to me was the driving force. Oftentimes when I'm doing these seminars, and the reason why I do it is because, especially us as people of color, we don't have it modeled for us, ownership, right? Especially in this country, right? It was something that was kept from us for so long. And so we're still trying to play catch up. The wealth gap in this country racially is still so large, and the home ownership gap as well, which I think is directly related. So it was all about showing people the possibility of home ownership and what it creates. Statistics even show that children that are raised in homes where the home is owned, they do better in school. They're because they feel more stability, right? There's just so much that goes into that. And when you've seen it modeled, what my parents owned, more than likely so will you, because you know that it's possible and you can do it. So most of the people that I am encountering have not seen it, and so it's like this crazy thought. They don't even think of it. A lot of people assume I can only rent. They don't even take the initial step to go find out, can I get pre-approved for a mortgage? Can I afford it? What are the steps? How can I prepare? So in that seminar, we do all the things. We talk about what the process looks like. How do you prepare to do it? What do you need credit-wise? What are the products out there that you can take advantage of? But that's the thing, is because we want people to realize that the possibility is there. And if you've never seen it before, let you be the person that sets that example for the rest of your family now. Because once they've seen you do it, then it becomes something like, okay, I can do that too. And that's what we want. We want you to be the it person in your family that everybody now says, wow, I didn't think that was possible, but if she can do it, if he can do it, so can I. So that's important to me. That's why I do Home to Harvest, and especially in the churches, because I do believe in that give back portion of it. You know, especially in our churches, I think there's so much more that we can be doing. And if our people were more educated around financing and creating wealth, you know, they talk about money is the root of all evil, the love of money, but money is necessary for us to do certain things. So if we were generating more wealth in our churches, tithing more, paying more offering, then we can have all these community services and we can do more in our communities. And so that's that give back piece. Some of the people that I've talked about, I was doing it at a church in Suffern in Rockland. And the pastor got up and said, I agree with everything this young lady has said. And he talked about how, you know, his first purchase, and it was like buy a home or buy this dream car he wanted, right? But you know, that depreciates, homes appreciate, right? So he bought it, and then from then he's bought several after he's been able to create additional wealth. And then what he did was he was able to start building schools and churches back where he came from. That's that give back piece. What are you able to do now in the service of the Lord when you have made this money? And that's what it's about, being able to look back, take care of your families and take care of your communities through this wealth. But if we don't see the possibility, it's just not going to happen.
You know, when you said, you don't know what you don't know, it's so true. I remembered being even apologetic when I reached out to a broker I knew, a mortgage broker.
Mm-hmm.
I was apologizing for wasting his time. My wife and I had a conversation and we wanted to know whether we qualified. And it was maybe 9 in the evening and I reached out and I says, man, I apologize for even texting you so late. My wife and I want to purchase, but we don't know if we qualify. And he responded like in 5 minutes and he's like, just send me these things. But
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't, if I hadn't done that,
Mm-hmm.
I may have put it off another year. Like, maybe we just need to do this before we can qualify. Maybe we just need to do this. But you don't know sometimes until you reach out
Yeah.
to a
Yeah.
professional who works in that field. So what you're doing in the civic and the religious space, I think it's so critical because many people have disqualified themselves without really knowing whether they qualify. So that's a really great point.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we have this idea in our head, like, how dare you think that you can have this? You know, we're children of God. He owns everything. You know, he said, seek and you shall find, ask and it shall be given to you. But we have to take the step, move towards it, and believe that, you know, we can have it. We're worth it. Um, and I think we have sometimes as Christians, we have like a pauper mentality. Like we think we're just supposed to struggle. And yes, we are going to go through struggles, but I don't think that that's what the Lord wants for us. Like, you know, for us to have nothing and for every day to be a struggle. And so we just have to have faith and step out. And even if we don't qualify in that moment, find out what is it that I need to do in order to get there. It could be a process, but it's still possible.
I want you to share with us, Cindy Lee, before we leave, some ways people can connect with you and contact you. As I indicated, she's a real estate professional. She handles sales, purchases, um, so many facets of real estate. And many of you are in spaces where you're considering looking and you want to speak to somebody who is on the ground. I want you to have Cindy Lee's information.
So my phone number is 845-821-2522. Email is Dorcely, CDORCELY @kw.com. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Dorcely Real Estate. Same thing on LinkedIn, I believe, or you can search Cindy Lee Dorcely. But if you need anything, you know, real estate related, I'm your homegirl for life because I'm not just the realtor for the transaction, but way beyond that. People call me all the time for anything.
It's powerful, powerful. And I'll share with listeners and viewers. If you follow Cindy Lee on Instagram, you'll see her workshops. She has a powerful live program each month called
Yes. Talk 30 to me.
Talk 30 to me. But it there she addresses estate planning. So many important, impactful conversations are done there. And you know, it's worth checking out. I'll post the handles on the notes and on the feed, and you can have it. And then almost finally, Cindy, as a mother and wife, share with listeners the promise of this nation and the responsibilities required to protect its ideals. What does that mean to you?
Oh man, the promise of this nation. um, you know, we talked a little bit about this before. So, um, the promise, I believe, of this nation was all about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What I do see is that that obviously has not been fully realized. Um, Still, that promise is kind of in motion. It's something that people believed the country was striving toward. Like we said, we grabbed onto what it was becoming, what we thought it was becoming. That's what we were drawn to. Um, but when we talk about the promise of this nation, we have to think about these two things. Um, the ideals that inspired us to come here to be a part of it, and then the reality that the ideals were not extended equally to everyone. And so when I think about myself as a wife to a Black man and a mom to a Black young man, again, we have to grapple with the reality, but still, I do have the hope of a better future, which is why I'm doing the work that I'm doing, because I believe that there is something powerful when we stand up. There is something powerful when we speak up against what we're seeing happening, when we speak up against injustice. And again, there is I think that's also completely faith-based. That's completely godly because that's what Jesus did. That's what he modeled. He stood up for the vulnerable and he stood up, for those people that were cast aside. And that's when he healed and did all the things that he did. And that's what he expects of us. And so, what I want for my child is access to equal opportunity. Um, because again, we're still fighting for what Black Americans have been fighting for so many years now. Like it has not been realized. And so we are still looking for that life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness that I believe is not just a promise, but is a right that should be given freely to everyone. And so as a wife and a mother in these times, that is what I'm truly focused on. I am concerned, my son probably thinks I'm crazy, and I am so grateful that he allows me to track his movements still. And he tracks mine, you know, um, because we have to be concerned. And we were concerned before. We were concerned. I was so concerned when my child started driving, and oh my God, what if he gets pulled over? We're fearful that our children aren't going to make it home. We are not going to make it home. And so now there's a whole other fear because the racism that was rebranded in this country, that was less overt, has now shown its ugly face, right? And so we're seeing it in schools more. We're seeing it in workplaces more. We're seeing it just randomly in the grocery store and churches. And so it is just navigating through that fear and still finding the strength to put one foot in front of the other and to truly try to live our lives still. He's working towards a degree, and still we have to be so concerned about so many things that others are privileged to not have to ever think about. So that's where I am when it comes to being a wife and a mother. I used to always with my husband, I track him too. And so when I see him in a spot, because sometimes when he's coming from work and he's tired, he pulls over to take like little naps, right? And so, when I see he's been in one spot for too long, and sometimes the navigation doesn't show it correctly. I thought he was like in the Hudson River one time because I was like, oh my God. And I kept calling, and I couldn't reach him. But it's not just, some people track them because they're afraid of like infidelity or all the different things. No, I'm worried if he got pulled over and is he dead on the street? And, those are the concerns that we have. And, that is a whole nother level of stress that, again, a lot of people never have to think about.
Cindy Lee, thank you so much. And I want to take this opportunity to let you know that I'm praying that doors will continue to open for you and your family, and God will continue to bless you. I also want to thank our leaders who've shown us. We spoke earlier about dignity, firmness, resistance, and also
Yes.
what Cindy Lee highlighted in her closing comments is hope even in the face of despair and chaos and cruelty. And we'll need to have a little and a lot of that going forward. But Cindy Lee Dorcely, real estate professional, president of the Middletown branch of the NAACP. Thank you so much for joining us on the Water Word podcast. I'll put ways you can follow her journey in the handles and in the notes. Thank you again, Cindy Lee, for joining me as a guest on the Water Word podcast.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. Much.
Most welcome. Most welcome.
Enjoy the rest of your snowy day.